Welcome to the Andy Staples Show. It is another 5-star questions from 5-star listeners edition. If you listen to Monday's show, Ari Wasserman and I answered the questions that you've attached to your 5-star reviews of this show, and we appreciate that. And the deal is you ask a question after leaving a 5-star review, we're going to answer it on the show. So we're going to try to get through as many of these as we can. We've actually got some new ones, Ari, so we're going to have to sprinkle these into just regular episodes, but we're still going to do these every once in a while because they're just fun. The questions are fantastic. So, but we have, I would say our listeners not only have 5-star hearts, they also have 5-star ears.
Yeah, they do. And 5-star brains. They're very smart.
Yeah.
I'm going to go leave a review from my account, and I'm going to ask you whether you would rather give up cheese for the rest of your life or have a 5% chance every morning of waking up covered in peanut butter for the rest of your life. You don't have to answer that now. You can ponder it.
No, this is an easy one. I'd take the peanut butter one once every 20 days. I'd go take a shower and I'll eat some cheese.
You think that it's just as simple as taking a shower, waking up in your bed covered in peanut butter?
Well, I mean,
that would be a 3-hour process, I think.
I don't think so.
Okay. I'm just saying, like, wait, you're late for
I'd
work or
probably
you're covering
eat
a
some of the
game.
peanut butter myself.
You wake up for a noon game in the SEC and you wake up at 9 a.m. ready to head over to the stadium and you're just doused in peanut butter in a hotel room?
Be doused. I have a shower, Ari. I have soap.
Okay.
I mean,
I think I would take the peanut butter too, but I think that you're underestimating how annoying that would be.
Isn't peanut butter what you use to get gum out of your hair?
I don't know. I've never had gum.
I think it'll wash out pretty easily.
Okay. I mean, I'm just thinking about how greasy and sticky it is, and then it would be all over your floor and on your sheets.
Okay. I got another bet for this season now. We got to figure out what game it is.
God, no.
Covered in peanut butter bet coming right up. If you think it's so difficult and I think it's so easy, we're going to find out.
But you're the one who has to do it. I don't want to do it. I'm the one who respects the difficulty.
You'll have to do it if you lose.
I'm the one that respects the difficulty of it. You'll have to come up with other terms for me. I don't want to do it. You're the one who says it's no big deal. You have to do it. Like the chip.
Your mind goes to so many bizarre places. No, I'm washing the peanut butter off and I'm eating some damn cheese. It's not that
laundry
difficult.
and vacuuming your floor and all that stuff. Have fun.
Trust me. I have faith that I can get out of the peanut butter scenario and eat.
Like, what if you had like a very big morning the next morning, and like every night before you went to bed, you had to be like, God, I hope tomorrow's not the day for the rest of your life.
I don't know. I'd probably just have a lot of jelly in my pantry.
Or also you'd have to wake up, like
take the bread and just strap it and wipe it down.
You'd also have to like wake up 30 minutes or 40 minutes earlier than you want to every day for the rest of your life, just to account for the possibility of it.
Imagine the 19 of the 20 days that you don't wake up covered in peanut butter. It's going to be such a relief. It's going to feel great.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to go to bed anxious every night.
All right. Well, that's a question from an insane person. Let's go to our 5-star listeners and listen to their questions, because they're a little more sensible than Ari's. All right. Corn on the Cob. Andy and Ari love the show. As the biggest USC fan on the East Coast, I'm wondering what you guys think about USC not having an organized NIL collective yet. Seems to me like it could cost them big time this summer with high-profile 2023 prospects. Well, Corn on the Cob, hopefully you've been reading The Athletic, and if you haven't, you can subscribe. $1 a month for your first 6 months. Go to theathletic.com/Andy Staples. Antonio Morales, our beloved USC beat writer, had a great story just yesterday on USC's collective. They now have an NIL collective. It's a little more prim and proper and attached to the school than some of these other ones. It is mainly going to be used probably for current players. But listen, in that market where they are, given the connections that school has, my guess they could do some pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, it's funny because I saw somebody tweet this the other day, and I believe it. I just feel like every single person who has an NIL collective, or every program or fan of their specific collective, feels like they're going to change the world with their specific ideas. And I think that as things become more regular and we kind of descend into normality a little bit, that they're all basically going to boil down to the same thing. It's just like, who is going to be able to pay the most money for advertisements and which ones have most access to businesses in the area and most interest in the players and which ones are most marketable. And, collective A is going to do it this way and collective B is going to do it this way. But I think in 5 years, they're all going to be the same. Don't you?
I do. Because that's how businesses work. And now you have disruptions every once in a while, but everything finds its level. Everybody figures out the most efficient way to operate. And that's exactly what's going to happen here. Now, with USC, I think what needs to happen for them and what they would like to happen is if they become one of the hottest brands in LA again, which they've been before. Now, when Pete Carroll was there, was a little bit different environment. The NFL had not returned to LA. The Lakers were good, but the Dodgers weren't. And it was really the Lakers and USC, and that was it. And so the USC was a huge brand. They were Southern California's football team, and I realized the UCLA fans are probably, but I mean, everybody was paying attention to USC at the time. They were a national brand, but they were very cool in the local market. Right now, it's a little bit more difficult when you've got the Super Bowl champions in your market. And oh, by the way, the other team that just came up from San Diego has one of the best young quarterbacks in the league and is going to be very exciting going forward.
Yeah,
So,
the one thing I've always wondered, though, and I'm not an expert on this, and maybe you know, is that there's always been kind of this semi-disconnect between the NFL franchises in LA, and that's why they kept moving. Like,
I don't know if
how passionate of an
disconnect.
NFL city is LA?
I feel like they're passionate Rams fans. The Rams were their team originally. Because remember the Raiders came in the 80s and were there briefly, but that was still a Bay Area team that was just down there. The Rams were their team. Then the Rams left, and now the Rams are back. The Chargers still feel kind of like interlopers, but the fact of the matter is you got Justin Herbert. They've got a good roster. They're going to be good. So it's going to be
Were LA fans St. Louis Rams fans?
I don't think so. I think they were mad about that.
Okay.
And boy, the St. Louis fans hate Stan Kroenke.
Yeah.
I can't imagine the Rams.
Yeah.
So
because I don't know if, and correct me if you think I'm wrong here, but I don't know if LA being really cool again is predicated on how much interest is elsewhere, like surfing or the NFL. I think it's just a matter of being the it thing at the time.
That's what I mean. You got to be good. Like USC's got to be good, and they will be cool in LA. Like they will kind of ascend. I don't know that they will be able to. It was kind of a happy accident that they could occupy the spot they occupied during the Pete Carroll era, but they can still be a big deal.
Because I like to think about, like, if you just drop one of the Oklahoma teams with Kyler Murray or Baker Mayfield just into LA as USC one of those years,
cool.
In the midst of whatever NFL was going on at that point, I still think that it would be one of the largest stories in sports.
Yeah, it wouldn't have taken until late November for us to figure out that Kyler was going to win the Heisman. So it was, yeah, I do think so. If Lincoln Riley does what he's supposed to do, I think this NIL collective will be able to generate a lot of interest and a lot of good deals for the players, and because they're going to be in demand, they're going to be considered cool, and I think that's really all it takes.
Yeah, and I'm glad that Antonio mentioned this in his story, but USC has been kind of played multiple roles in the NIL conversation, in the past few months. When you look at the way people perceived Josh Conerly Jr.'s decision to go to Oregon, people thought, well, Oregon just had a better collective or a better NIL deal or a better pitch, and USC kind of was sitting on their hands. And then a few weeks later, or was it a month later, when Jordan Addison transferred from Pitt, everyone's like, oh my God, USC just paid him to do it. It's just like,
right.
Which one was it?
Right. It's not both. The answer is not both. So Jordan Addison might have looked at it and gone, you know what? I want to play with Caleb Williams in a Lincoln Riley offense. That might have been it, because Jordan Addison's going to get paid next year, regardless of where he played this year. He's going to get paid.
And I wonder too, and maybe I'm very curious what you have to say about this, but certain prospects are going to get paid no matter where they go.
Yes, correct. Well, and Jordan Addison's one that probably will command, again, NIL the way it was intended to, not as an inducement. he's going to command that sort of deal because he's going to be a high profile player who's putting up good numbers. So he was going to be able to do that.
Are so sexy too.
The uniforms are beautiful, but if you look at what Jordan Addison was looking at, USC, Texas, and Alabama, he would have gotten deals anywhere he went.
That's right.
Anywhere he went, he was going to be fine. So I think that's the part that you gotta understand is not. It's not that they have an NIL collective or the NIL collectives that are throwing money at recruits are a little bit different animal. And this is something we don't know. We can't predict because we don't know how that's going to work, if it's going to work. And we also don't know if people are going to be willing to refill that or reinvest in new recruits, or will they say, you know what? I would rather take this money and spend it on a guy who just had a great freshman year and make sure he stays on the team and is happy for the next 2 years.
Yeah. Also,
that's
too,
a more sure investment.
It's a business too. So like if you actually are getting anything in return, whether it's banquet appearances or local spots on commercials or tweets, you want the person that you're paying for
right.
their name, image, and likeness to have a really good name, image, and likeness.
Exactly. It's much lower risk. You get the person you want. Like if you're doing meet and greets at golf tournaments, the people paying for the golf tournament are happy because they got to meet somebody who's good.
Will pay more because they want to meet somebody who's already really good.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. So I do think this will all kind of find its level. We just don't know exactly how that's going to work quite yet because it's so new. Everything's new. All right, let's go to our next question. This one is from Jeff C. and Jax. Huge fan of the pod and all the random discussions. Good. Well, cheese versus peanut butter, waking up covered in it is a great discussion to have. Question for you guys. I'm a Georgia Tech alum, and Andy has mentioned Deion Sanders to Tech a couple of times in passing. Do you think that's a real possibility or maybe inside information? I'm gonna break your heart, Jeff. I don't have any inside information on that. That's just me reading the tea leaves and saying, I don't think Mike Norvell is going to get fired at Florida State this year, which is where I think Deion would like to go. I don't think Jeff Collins is in real good shape at Georgia Tech right now. And that is a place that I think Deion could do considerable damage as a recruiter. Now, I don't know if Deion wants to do that. He was just in Sports Illustrated talking about how he wants to bring back HBCU football to a new level. And maybe he wants to stay at Jackson State and do that. Maybe he wants to go back to Texas where he was living before. I don't know. But I think if you put Deion Sanders doing what he's doing at Jackson State, you put him at a Power 5 school in Midtown Atlanta, whoo boy.
If you took all the best teams or the already made teams out of the equation and you had to pick a spot for Deion Sanders to build from, like I think Georgia Tech might actually be like one of the top 5 choices of
Florida State would be one of my number one choice, or would be my top 2 or 3 choices.
And it's like I'm trying to figure out like how to view Florida State right now because they've been down for quite some time, and it seems like kind of a long way back up the mountain. But like, what about if you took all traditional powers out of the equation, and like Deion had to go to the Power 5 and make something out of someone that hasn't really been something before? And I know Georgia Tech won a title in the 80s, but question. Like I feel like Georgia Tech might actually be the answer to that question.
Georgia Tech is going to end. 1990. I was at that Citrus Bowl at the end of the 1990 season when Georgia Tech clinched a share of the national title.
Were you a kid?
I was 12. Yeah, 12 years old.
I was going to say, like, I didn't know if you're like, I covered that game. I was like, what?
No, I was a 7th grader. I think, I think my high school, they were selling programs. The players were making extra money selling programs, but I was still in middle school. So that would be one. Yes. And Georgia Tech is a place you can do that. It's a state school. I realize it's a academically prestigious state school. It's hard to stay in the major. There's no real super easy major there. So that is a challenge and has been a challenge for the coaches who've been there. It's the reason Paul Johnson was a good choice there running the option. Because
what about UCLA too, though? No, I'm trying to think of other ones.
UCLA cares enough. Like you got to deeply care about football, and Georgia Tech does.
But usually there's a correlation between caring deeply about football and being somewhat good at some point.
Here's one. Let's say Dave Doran has a great year at NC State and leaves.
Yeah.
I think Deion could do great at a school like NC State because NC State cares about football. They're going to invest in it. They can get good players there. They have a history of having some really good players. They've had, elite quarterbacks. They have Phillip Rivers, Russell Wilson, then a number 1 pick in the draft in Mario Williams the year that Reggie Bush came out. I mean, it is that's a place I think a lot of coaches would go, you know what? That feels like a pretty good job.
I'm thinking maybe he's from Texas, right? Originally?
No, he's from Florida. He's from Fort Myers, Florida. But
he didn't go to high school in Texas?
No, he went to high school in Florida.
Oh.
So, but he started a high school in Texas. He settled in Texas after his NFL.
That's why I'm getting confused.
Yeah, you're thinking of Prime
leadership. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So now TCU, SMU, that sort of thing. It looks like those are set for a little while, unless Rhett Lashley just is great at SMU and gets another job. But Baylor, I don't think Aranda's going anywhere right now. And Aranda seems like the type that, Baylor actually might be the spot for Deion. But the problem is Dave Aranda's got a good thing going, and he does not strike me as the type who's just going to jump at the first kind of national title contender type place that tries to hire him.
I think I've got the answer.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know if it'll be better than Georgia Tech, but what about ASU?
I'm with you. I'm with you on that. And think about this. He's getting kids to Jackson State with his force of personality. And it's really what it is. It's his force of personality that is causing those guys to say, you know what, I can succeed here. You give him Tempe, Arizona, and you give him much bigger resources, even though, most people would complain, like an SEC coach or a Big Ten coach would go, oh, we don't have nearly the resources of any of these people. But I think the resources would be good enough. And especially coming from where he's at, he would be like, I can work with this. I definitely think Arizona State would be a spot that, and the thing about Deion that I think is most impressive about what he's done at Jackson State is he's gotten people to invest in that program. He got Walmart to donate a practice field surface for them. He got, he reached out to all these places and tapped relationships that he already had to bring in money that program just didn't have available to it.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the HBCU programs struggle to raise money in that way. And so, and he's doing, like, one of the smarter things I heard him say in an interview that I found really interesting and had not thought about. So with the HBCU games, that they have a lot of these classics where one team has always played another team at a neutral site. And it's kind of a reunion for both schools each year. Well, apparently there's these management companies that run all these classics that basically take all the money and don't give much of the money to the schools. And Deion's thing is, why is that? Why don't the schools just run them themselves, rent the stadium themselves, and keep the money? And so everything he's done tells me this guy understands all of this game a lot better than most people, which you should expect, because Deion as a brand while he played was pretty smart. Now, forget that he's one of the more phenomenal athletes in the history of sports. Like, he was the best cornerback in the NFL. And, oh, by the way, could take a helicopter and then go play in a Major League Baseball game. Like, there aren't many. Bo Jackson's maybe the only other person that compares.
I just like to think, too, just what could make the Pac-12 relevant again. And maybe the answer will be USC eventually. But like,
that would work.
Using primetime as his nickname as a way to be like, primetime is after dark. You know what I mean? And like, make ASU like the coolest. Yes. The coolest, like, it's like you got to really lean into it, but make ASU like the official visit capital. Like, see, like, we've got the best official visit on the face of the earth. Use Tempe, use the weather, use everything that you can. Get those kids from California out there. I really do think that ASU,
like the kids from the South out there, the kids from the South love it.
And it's I know
about ASU. Okay, Phoenix has a huge airport. What is the Uber ride from Sky Harbor to Tempe? 10 minutes?
Maybe.
Like, it's a direct flight from wherever you are, pretty much. 10-minute Uber ride, and you're in paradise for a college student.
Yes. And I think that they have a lot to sell about being cool. It's like, if you think about Lincoln Riley as the villain of of the sport right now, and like what USC could do and how he left Oklahoma and all the things that transpired after it. Like if Deion Sanders played like the, to maybe kind of have that same viewpoint of like the way you would have viewed the U back when it was the U, like
Yes.
and like be like, well, we're going to showboat, we're going to dance, we're going to have a good time, we're going to do the, the Deion Sanders, whatever,
yeah.
and like make ASU that. And it's like, I know that ASU has kind of been like this program that's experimented with different types of things to try to rebrand their program
after
and
some
stuff.
of the dumb cheating they tried to do that got all these people fired. Like, don't cheat, just be a renegade program. Like be the bad boys of college football. That's a great look. It's fun. Like, and especially now where I think people are more willing to accept that. Like, if the Miami teams of the 80s were playing now, there would be a large portion of the college football fan base that would embrace them, that hated them back then, but would embrace them now, because we look at these things differently. It's not just
but that's the thing about
heroes, villains kind of thing.
Being hated is being relevant.
No kidding.
So
you're exactly right.
If you get, I don't think there's a lot of college football fans out there right now that, have you ever watched Mad Men?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And I can't remember the character. It's been 7 years, but the guy who got into the elevator with Don Draper, and he goes, "I feel bad for you."
Oh yeah.
And then Don Draper looks back at him and says, "I don't really think about you.
I
don't
even think about you at all." It was Pete Campbell, who had some great elevator conversation.
Yes, I don't think about you at all. I mean, there are a lot of people in college football that don't think about Arizona State at all.
The greatest scene in Mad Men, and I say this as someone who routinely quotes the "that's what the money's for" scene with Don and Peggy. But the greatest scene in Mad Men was Pete Campbell gets in the elevator with Bob Benson, and Bob's like, "How are things going, Pete?" And he goes, "Not great, Bob."
I don't know. When you watch that show, I found myself drinking a lot.
I started drinking old fashions because of
during it, right? Like I started but you would drink whiskey while watching the show because
it's tremendous.
Can you explain to me how these people drank that way and were even 5% productive during the day? Is that what office life actually was like, or was it like dramatized a little bit?
No, that apparently was what it was like, but they died in their early 60s of liver failure. That's why. That's how they did it.
But it's just like crazy to me to think that these people would show up and have a very demanding job, from what I can understand, like advertising, writing copy.
Didn't look that demanding to me.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we'd be pretty good at it.
Not putting on roofs in the summer.
I guess being an advertisement person is like kind of like coming up with a recruiting strategy. But basically, they were they were drinking. You saw the heavy pours they were putting in. If I drank that much, I'd be blacked out.
3 martini lunch, baby. That's the way to do it.
And it's like, is that just what going to work was in 1965?
I guess.
I can think like my dad lived
for
in
a very select subset of people. Yes, it was. But for everybody else, it probably was a little more difficult. So
yeah.
All right, let's move on to this next question. This is a lengthy one, but I like it. This is Purple Haze WA. So John in Spokane, Washington. This is back in early June. He sent this in. On the latest episode, you mentioned the Big Ten could go with a 3-5 scheduling model that would allow each school to keep 3 permanent rivals while accomplishing the round robin with the remaining schools in just an 8-game schedule. This seems like an excellent opportunity for the Big Ten to experiment with a 3-5+1 model, which is not a math equation. The +1 would be keeping the week prior to the Big Ten championship game open so they could have the top 4 play in what would essentially be regular season semifinal games, with the winners advancing to the championship. And I have to think the league's new TV partners would love this. The remaining teams could get paired up in any number of ways, try to avoid rematches, lower teams against lower teams to try to make sure one gets bowl eligible, etc. But to me, the best aspect would be the semifinal games, maybe with some rules regarding seeding to try to avoid rematches if possible. If a rematch gets made for the championship, so be it, as they earn their way back in. Semis could also help eliminate the immediate rematch between 2 teams in a championship coming off their rivalry game. If there is an immediate rematch and a semifinal game can be avoided, that is really great. And so what John sent is the genesis of that SEC versus all y'all idea that we've talked about. Greg Sankey, the SEC commissioner, mentioned that they had thrown out some ideas. They just spitballed some stuff about leaving a week open for semifinals and that sort of thing. That's exactly what this is. And in the Big Ten, I think it would work too. And this is already, remember the pandemic season, the Big Ten was going to have that. And they played a couple of games, but a lot of the games didn't wind up getting played because of COVID stuff. But they basically left a week open and then matched a bunch of teams up at the end.
Yeah, the Big Ten championship weekend was supposed to be an entire conference affair that day.
Well, why not do that with the last week of the regular season? Like,
so the last week of the regular
idea.
season is a semifinal, 2 semifinal games to get into the Big Ten championship.
Right, and then the other games are
for bowl eligibility
or whatever. You've matched. Just make the most fun matchups you can for the the other.
So how do you take out one of the regularly scheduled games then from the regular season in order to accommodate this?
You go from an 8-game you really end up playing a 9-game conference schedule, but you play it as an 8-game conference schedule.
Got it.
And that
it's like a little mini tournament before the tournament.
Yeah, and the math with a 14-team league, the math works out really well that way. That is a great idea, and from a TV standpoint, I would love that. The fact that it eliminates the possibility of 2 Ohio State Michigan games in a row, I think is pretty. Now it doesn't necessarily, because they could wind up getting matched in the semifinals. But at least it's not the championship game.
So all you have to do is be in the top 4 of the Big Ten standings after 7 games to put yourself in a position to play into the Big Ten championship and win it?
Correct. After 8 games.
Do you ever fear about tournament fatigue?
No. Especially not as gambling gets legalized in more states.
It's just a tournament, a Final Four to help you get into the Final Four.
As long as it won't be a Final Four though.
Or at this point, it'll be a Final 12 or whatever it turns out to be.
But the thing is, I just think people like stakes. They like stakes that they can understand.
Yeah,
and it does add drama. So I think that would be fun. I also like the flexibility. Like, I know everybody would be focusing on the semifinals, but I would love the flexibility to create some cool matchups. Like, let's say two teams that aren't permanent rivals played an amazing game last year, but then the schedule rotated, so they're not supposed to see each other for 2 more years. Well, you put them together.
Yeah.
In that last week. And hopefully they play another fun game. Like, that's the part. I think the fatigue in college football, and Joel Klatt and I talked about this the other day, comes from we can't possibly schedule any other way. We have to schedule games 13 years in advance. And no, you don't. You don't have to do that. There's a better way. And this is one of them. And, the SEC could potentially do something like this too.
Yeah, I do. I like the thought of anything new that would create new and exciting matchups. So, it is a very interesting way to look at it, because then it's just like all you have to do is be the top 4 out of 14. That's basically 30% of the entire conference gets to play in that. And then it kind of it changes away from what you would typically have to do in order to play in the Big Ten championship, which is be undefeated or only lose 1 game in your conference.
Right. And the thought is, okay, so it's always going to be Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State.
That's all you're going to do is just open it up to the 4 teams in the Big Ten, 3 teams in the Big Ten East or whatever, and 1 in the West.
Here's the thing, though. Like, Iowa's going to be in there pretty frequently. Wisconsin's going to be in there pretty frequently. But what Minnesota may be able to
I assume that in this scenario, there's no more divisions, right?
No, the divisions
So if there's no more divisions, then what you're doing is you're putting yourself in a position where you're going to be Big Ten East heavy, right? Or as it currently stands right now.
Yeah, but you're going to do that with the championship game anyway. This gives the West a more opportunity to sneak in.
I think that if you did this, the Big Ten West would have a hard time making it to the title game.
Where there would be no Big Ten West.
So I'm saying, I'm using it as a structure so you can know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Like, if you're going to have a Ohio State Michigan or Ohio State Michigan State or Ohio State Penn State championship every year, I think that would end up being worse. Well, but Wisconsin or Iowa would probably be good enough to win one of the semifinal games. Yeah,
right. And Wisconsin or Iowa would occasionally be good enough to win the whole thing. So that's fine. I think that would be a lot of fun. John, that's a great idea. If anybody goes with it, I think John deserves some finder's fee money, that is very well thought out. Like, when I do these, I write these columns, like, maybe they should try this. I haven't thought nearly as far ahead as John did. So I'm glad that somebody's thinking.
Well, I think a lot of the fun of college football too is like people thinking about this type of thing. Because the thing about it is that college football has changed dramatically, not just with the NIL stuff, but I just mean like the postseason, not too long ago. And it seems like it's a sport that's got so many moving parts and it just has endless potential to improve itself.
Yes.
And people are constantly coming up with ideas like this that make you think, what would it be like to cover a season like that, or to think about the way that it would go, or how would fans react to it? And it's just like endless possibilities of awesomeness, which makes podcasting fun and liking the sport fun.
Absolutely. And I'm telling you, this one feels very realistic. Like, this feels very possible. If you think it through logically, it makes sense. Like, the only thing that we're, you might have issues and schools may push back is, well, you're only going to give us a week's notice of when and where we're going to play that last week. I don't know if I want to do that. I think you can get around that. I think you can work with that. So I like anytime somebody's, instead of complaining about the sport, thinking about ways that could make it more fun, because there are ways that could make it more fun. And anything that breaks the sport out of we must schedule games for 2036 now, I'm all for. Like,
because it's like you
please.
See on Twitter, Oregon and Alabama schedule a home and home for 2036. And in the moment, it's like, oh my God, that sounds amazing. It's going to be great. But Oregon could suck by then, or Alabama could suck by then.
Or I might be dead.
Yeah, or I might be dead. I don't like to think about it in those terms, but
yeah.
How many times have there been big time non-conference matchups that come up on the calendar that would have been cool 10 years ago?
Oh yeah. Well, like Oklahoma, Tennessee was still fun when Oklahoma went to Neyland Stadium. I think that was Lincoln Riley's first year as OC. But when it was made, like, Tennessee was one of the elite teams in the country.
Yeah. And I mean, there's a tremendous amount of projecting that goes into those. Like, you have people looking at recruiting classes and who the head coaching situation is, and like trying to figure out what is the likelihood that this team is still going to be good in 9 years. It's like, I remember some of the Ohio State and Miami home and homes or home games that happened. That was just like, wow, this would have been awesome if it happened.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
it happened when it was scheduled. It would have been amazing.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to this next question. This is a perfect summer podcast, column, you name it. Little realignment, hypothetical. DB5. Which 8 teams do you add to the SEC 24-team super conference in 2030?
And geography obviously doesn't play a factor into it.
I don't know if it does. This is the type of question that just makes people mad.
I know.
But,
well, I knew you would pick it too the second I saw it. So,
we have to answer these questions. They left a 5-star review.
Yeah,
we promise.
So Clemson. So I mean, Oklahoma and Texas don't count for the 24 then, right?
Right, they're already in.
They're already in. I'm not very good at math.
Yeah, so that's 16. So we got 8 more, and this is the doomsday scenario that you hear a lot of people throwing out with. The SEC and the Big Ten form their own gravitational pull, and it's essentially 2 super leagues. So how does it go? Now, here's my question to you, Ari. Would it be like that, or would it be that the like-minded programs gravitate to the SEC, which would include a certain program in Columbus, Ohio, that is in the Big Ten, that acts way more like an SEC program than a Big Ten program?
Yeah, I've got 7 that just were easy, and I don't know who the 8th would be. You want me to read the 7? I mean, all you're doing is you're watering down, or you're removing all the fat, I guess, from what people complain about. It's like, why do you only focus on these teams? It's just like, well, the rest of the sport would be doomed if this happened. But Clemson,
yep,
Ohio State,
yep,
Oregon,
okay,
USC,
yep,
Miami, Florida State,
yep,
Notre Dame, and there's one other one, maybe Wisconsin.
Yeah. Would like Penn State come at that point?
Penn State's also Penn State's one of them. Maybe Michigan could be the other one.
Michigan State would want in, and then Michigan would be like, no, we couldn't possibly. And then when everybody else was leaving, would be like, yeah, no, we're going to.
It would be funny though, because if you put it at 8 to make it a 24 super team or conference team, like the teams that get left out, like if you add Michigan and Michigan State into that mix, and maybe Michigan should go just because of the
I think people would be saying, hey, you're going to have a hard conversation with Mississippi State and Vanderbilt right now.
Yeah, that's true, because if that ever happened, you'd have to make room. But like, let's just say I added Michigan to the bottom of the list, right? So you have Clemson, Ohio State, Miami, Oregon, USC, Florida State, Notre Dame, and Michigan. You'd have Penn State looking on the outside looking in. You'd have Michigan State on the outside looking in, Wisconsin on the outside looking in. It's like you have some really good programs that would just kind of be in no man's land after that, right? Like, I mean, what do you even do if you have 3 leftover teams? It's like you might as well just expand it to whatever the next viable number is, because I think you're better off having a team like Vanderbilt in your conference than leaving out a team that can enhance it, right?
Right.
Even if it makes it a weird number.
Well, I think that if this happened, I don't think it would be 2 leagues. I think it would coalesce into one, and it'd be one super league that would be about 35 or 40 schools. If that happened, I still, the Big Ten and the SEC are so philosophically different that I do find it hard to believe that would ever actually happen, because it would require schools that are currently in the Big Ten and the SEC to then agree on things and be part of the same thing. Now, if that league existed, the TV contract for that league would be off the charts. It would make a fortune.
I mean, all it would do is just be every week is a big game.
Yes.
Or every week is a brand helmet game, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't know, you're more of a TV viewership expert than I am, but don't helmet games just automatically get a ton of views no matter what?
They do.
Like, even if the teams aren't very good in that
they
specific
draw
year.
They draw in the casual fan. Now, the question is, and this is something people have brought up that I think is interesting. Does the casual fan go away if you suddenly make it where, you know, you've now shunted off most of the FBS? Like, do those people not care anymore? Or do they still care?
Because the casual fan is a Mizzou fan.
Correct.
Who wants to watch Georgia Clemson.
Right.
And if Mizzou isn't in the SEC anymore.
But are they done with college football?
That would be it. I'd wipe my hands of it.
Yeah. So that's the thing. I don't know that, and this is kind of what the situation was with the Super League in soccer. There was a fan revolt and they ended up not doing it. And I do think there is a concern that if you do something like that, you lose that casual viewer that you want. Now, I don't know. I think that if the football's good enough and the product's entertaining enough, some of those people either come back or never leave, but you're going to lose people.
And gambling, I think, is really changing the shift of things too, because gambling is 5 years ago or 7 years ago, gambling was like shady.
Yeah.
Like you had to find a
now it's very mainstream.
It's like now it's just a mainstream thing to do. So I think gambling on sports, you know, I'm sure there's a lot of people like me who will gamble on anything if it's on television, you know, and it's like interactive television watching. So like to me, that kind of helps a little bit. But like I remember this distinctly because we and you had very different college newspaper experiences.
Mm-hmm.
You covered a team that was very, very good. And I covered a team that was pretty good at times, but no one really had any fantasies of them going to a BCS game at that time or whatever it was.
Right.
So I remember like walking into a stadium at Arizona Stadium at one point as like a junior in college, you know, reporter for the student newspaper. And there was a big game. I can't remember what game it was, but I remember the stakes were that if Arizona won, they would get to go to the Las Vegas Bowl. And like the entire campus.
This is Ari's dream.
No, I mean, that was the last bowl. That was the last game I ever covered for the student newspaper. And I remember thinking, why are you guys so passionate? And it had nothing to do with going to Vegas, but they were so into like, we have to win this game. We have to go to a bowl game.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought to myself, like, what's the point of even caring about your team if like the biggest thing that you can accomplish is going to the Vegas Bowl, you know? And I think that at times it's gotten me into trouble in my current position because a lot of times I think in terms of, well, are you going to make the playoff? Are you going to win your conference? Are you going to win the big? You
would have made a dynamite Alabama fan or a dynamite Ohio State fan or Auburn fan or LSU fan.
But that's what the games as a kid that we watched. We watched the Miami games and the Ohio State games and the big time teams back from when we were kids, the LSU national championships like that. I mean, I don't think that's changed. Everybody wants to win a national title. And I just never understood the temperament of a fan who rooted for a team that has 0% chance of winning the national championship. But now in 2022, that makes for 90% of the entire sport. So like you have to like reshift your brain into accepting the fact that there are other things to root for, like the build.
Like the second half over.
Yeah, but or like just like the build, or like, hey, you know what? I love my program. I'm going to go to that stadium every Saturday when I can, when they're home, and root for them to win, no matter who they're playing or how their season's going. And it's like there's a certain aspect to that I think is charming. So, you know, and then the root, and like exactly what we were talking about Michigan State, right? Like, you know, hey, we might not win the national championship for 2 or 3 years, but hell, it's a heck of a lot of fun to try to watch them.
Yeah, we're gonna try like hell,
you know,
and this experiment will be fun.
Expanding the conferences the way that you would completely deprive these people of any last semblance of pride they have in their school, because they're not even, we're not even in the sense of inclusion at that point. Which
and that's why, and I talked about this with Joel the other day. You know, I think people get we hear from listeners and readers that people think we're rooting for this. We're not rooting for this. We're just telling you this is a possibility. We're telling you this is the direction things might go. I don't think that's a good thing. I don't. I think a national league or a national group of schools or conferences or however you want to do it, but something that covers the entire nation and covers it at varying levels is a much better product and much more fun and much more, you know, for the nostalgia factor, which I think matters a lot in college football, much more important. So I would not like it to go to the super conference thing. So I'm hoping that the schools can figure something out. And like the stuff we talked about with Joel the other day, there's a lot of people who just reflexively say no to any idea. Like Joel's idea of, you know, create a governing body for football, which is something they're actually talking about right now. That might actually happen. And that governing body, which is basically the CFP, would control the postseason, which it already does. But then you give it the non-conference games to sell as part of a TV deal. And then you split that evenly. I don't think that's impossible. Like, I think the SEC and the Big Ten, you might be able to talk them into that.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody else would want that, of course. But you might be able to talk them into that and say, look, you know, you're still going to be able to sell your conference games and make tons more money than the ACC or the Pac-12. But this will help close that gap a little bit. This will be the rising tide that floats all boats, because you will still make more money than you would have in the old system. And that's the way you do it. Like, the reason the Dallas Cowboys and the New York Giants and the Chicago Bears and the teams that would normally make the most money in the NFL, the reason they're willing to split the pie with everybody is because they know they make more doing it that way. You can say it sounds like communism, but it's capitalism when everybody's trying to make the most money they can. And there's a way that it makes you more if you're the SEC, if you're the Big Ten, doing it that way. And so it's possible. It's still possible to have kind of what we have now, but in a better organized way that actually has some rules and has some stuff where you might be able to create a little more competitive equity. So hopefully that's what happens. But let's move to the next question. A 5-star show about God knows what. I do appreciate this from Funsies. Added the show to my list at the start of the Riley reign at Southern California. Not really sure what it's about. There's college football talk, dating advice, weight loss tips, fast food rankings. They go more in depth than the recruit discussions, and that's A-okay. Question for Ari and Andy: with your newfound interest in Premier League soccer, will you each pick a team from the newly promoted to root for in the upcoming season? So we're not talking about Man City. We're not talking about Liverpool. We're talking about the teams that just came up from the second division. Nottingham Forest, Bournemouth, or Fulham. Rooting for a top side to win the league is not nearly as much fun as rooting for your side to stave off relegation. Keep up the good work. I don't know anything about any of those teams, although I do. Fulham is owned by the Jaguars owner, Shad Khan. So I'm not sure I trust the management there. Nottingham Forest, I'm a big Robin Hood fan, so I think I got to go with Nottingham Forest. Hopefully there's not an evil sheriff that will mess things up.
I'm still trying to process this. Can I just say something?
You may.
I got a new sport.
Oh, okay.
I found hockey.
Oh, hockey's a wonderful sport.
I don't know anything about it, but I watched the New York Rangers run in the playoffs, and I was very, very entertained by it for multiple reasons. And I know that the entire planet is a soccer planet. And please don't use this as a clip for the promo, because I don't want everybody on Twitter to hate me. I can't get behind soccer because they don't seem to ever score. And it feels like as they are about to score, it's always like, oh my God, he's going to score. Oh my God, he's going to score. Oh my God, he's going to score. Oh no, he didn't score. And
Right.
like, watching a game like that drives me insane.
Yeah, hockey, if you're going to have a 5-3 game, like that feels like a good amount of scoring. It feels like an acceptable amount of scoring where it's not ridiculous. Like, I don't want to watch a 14-12 baseball game. That's too much scoring. My mind doesn't process that right. But soccer, like 1-0, 2-0, 2-1, like, I'm sorry. Just shoot the ball more. Like, I'm all for getting rid of the offsides rule in soccer. Like, cherry pick away, score some.
Yeah, because it's just like you look at the over-unders of the Stanley Cup playoffs, and the Stanley Cup, I think it's like the over-unders are usually like 7, or 7.5.
And that feels about right.
And
so the
soccer, it's like 1.5 or 2.
Yeah, the Avalanche Lightning game 1 of the Stanley Cup Finals ended with a 4-3 Avalanche win in overtime. Very exciting.
Very exciting game.
They score infrequently enough in hockey to make scores very valuable and
right.
huge moments in the game, but they score enough to make it where it's not boring.
And the game doesn't feel like it's over when it's 1-0.
Right.
And I was watching the Super Bowl, whatever game you and I were babbling about back and forth. And I think the score might have been 1-1 or something, or 2-1. And I felt like that was a high scoring thing, but it's just like 45-minute halves. It's a lot of time to invest for like,
my other issue with soccer, I'm sorry, we've had clocks for a long, long time that can count backward. And if something happens where the ball goes out of bounds, you can press a button and stop the clock. And then when
I agree.
puts the ball back in play, you can press a button and start the clock. Like, there doesn't need to be any mystery. It doesn't need to be kept on the field by the referee. You could put it on the scoreboard and everybody could look at it.
It's also, too, I feel like the extra time that they put on the clock at the end of it never equates to how much grab ass is happening during the game.
Right.
It's like I feel like they're only actually playing for 30 minutes of the 45.
Well, and they're running a lot, so I don't necessarily blame them for that. But.
Yes. And somebody's explained it to me that 45 minutes is much more than you would get in a hockey game to account for, because its hockey game is this 20-minute periods, which is only 60 minutes, or in soccer it's 90. So like I get it.
Well, and a hockey shift lasts like a minute and a half because they are going all out. Like, you are dead by the end of that 90 seconds.
And one other thing about soccer, I despise ties.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think
do we have to have Herman Edwards come on? There's nothing more unsatisfying to me than watching a game for 90 minutes or 3 hours, 90 minutes of game time, and the final score being unresolved. It's like, what was that for then?
Why
do we do this for?
Why were we here today?
No ties. It's not American.
It's like it is not American. That's why they do it, because they're not Americans.
Well, but, I mean, there's a huge.
What did Bear Bryant say? It's like having to kiss your sister.
There is a huge, I feel like, influx of American interest in soccer, like more so than ever. Yeah. And it's happened gradually from the World Cup in 2010 or 11 or whatever year that was to now. I feel like more, like, I know I've got random friends who are like, I got to watch the Manchester United game. It's like, okay. Like, I don't even know how you landed on that. But.
I do think people like the fact that it does fit into a nice, tidy window. They can say, well, here's where I'm going to be at the bar from here to here, or here's where, this is my viewing period, which we get that in college football sometimes. It's a very different split. Like, there's some fans who are like, no, college football games need to be shorter. They need to fit in the 3 hour and 15-minute window. And then other fans, and I'm in this group where I'm like, I don't care how long it is.
Yeah.
I'm here to watch the game. So
yeah, that's funny.
So it is weird. We've got another good question. This is from Joe Philbin. With Ari coming to SEC country at some point this season, can you power rank the top 5 tailgating drinks to have an unrelenting heat and humidity? Oh, yeah. Well, none of these drinks that I'm going to mention are actually good for you when it's hot because they all have alcohol in them, and so they will dehydrate you. So mix in a water or a Gatorade, or now they've got the Pedialyte version of Gatorade. Mix that in. I highly recommend. But your the number one thing I want to sip on when it's hot, and it's going to sound weird, Ari, because part of this is spicy, a jalapeno margarita.
Yeah, it is kind of a weird thing.
Jalapeno margaritas are the best. And I've had like Serrano ones. I've had habanero ones. Habanero is a little much, but the spicy margarita is a tremendous drink because it's, you do it on the rocks. It's cold. It's ice cold. And then you get that spicy thing in the back of your throat and then more ice. So it's a tremendous feeling on a hot day.
Yeah. Mine is Blimes. Blimes. You know what a Blime is?
What is a Blime?
Bud Light Lime.
Oh, okay. All right. Bud Light. So if we're going with
on a hot day,
Anheuser-Busch, if we're going with Anheuser-Busch products on a hot day, I'm all Natter Days. Have you had Natter Days yet?
Yes.
So right now they've got the red, white, and blueberry, which is very good. But the original strawberry lemonade Natter Days is very good too.
There's no better buzz on the face of drinking, on the face of the earth when drinking than
a Blime?
4 Bud Light Limes in this nice sunny day. Yeah, like it's one of those beers that you could drink all day and not get sick, but also carry like a really solid buzz for a long period of time, and they don't taste bad. Like it's like to me some of the things that people drink out in tailgates and stuff. It's just like how do you drink that?
That is the tricky part with distance drinking when you are going all day is pacing yourself and figuring out. So that's where if you've got a mass produce macro brew type beer that you love, that's the best spot for that because it will keep you out of trouble. Because that margarita I just mentioned, if you drink 2 or 3 of those too fast, you're done. Your day's over.
Yeah.
So that's your Natter Days, your Bud Light Limes. Those are the ones that'll keep you going a lot longer, especially if you're mixing in the water or the Powerade or the Gatorade that I'm talking about. If we're doing mixed drinks, though, other mixed drinks that would go well on a hot day, the mojito is a fantastic hot day drink.
A Moscow Mule is a good one.
Well, I would also say replace the vodka in the Moscow Mule with dark rum, and you got a dark and stormy. It is fantastic. That is a very good drink.
Or replace some of the ginger beer in a Moscow Mule and put in Sprite is also very refreshing.
Well, Sprite and vodka will never not be great.
Yeah,
like that is.
Well, I mean, it's just like we're talking about being outside in the heat. I always like picture tailgating when it's really, really hot outside for some reason.
That is another one, though, the Sprite and vodka, or when I was in high school, they called Sprite and Bacardi Limon holy water. That'll get you in deep trouble real fast if you're not careful, though.
Yeah, because
it does not taste like anything.
Pacing is just as important about this than what you enjoy too.
Yes.
Like you want to get blacked out, right? I know, like you want to be like completely hammered in the third quarter of a big game in your stadium. I get it.
Yeah. See,
but you don't want to be sick.
I want to be in control. I want to remember everything. So
yeah, you want to be buzzed and happy. I get it.
Exactly. So that's the key here. We got time for one more question. This is a great one. I prepped Ari for this one going in because I know how he feels about this particular person. Ziggy Stardust 50403. I've got to find it on my slides here. Here we go. What is Ari's rating of Ryan Gosling's defensive abilities? Remember the Titans. Also, what is the lowest player ranking composite of a team to have a chance to win the national championship? Well, we'll get to that later, but probably it's in the top 8. That's probably about it. But let's go with Gosling and remember the Titans. He is an absolute liability at cornerback. Absolute liability.
Yeah, my favorite part of the entire movie is when his dad goes, "Get my kid back in the game." And it's like every single thing that they've shown of your kid the entire game is him getting burned by, and like it's not like he's like not making plays. He's out of the picture frame.
Right.
Like, are you like not understanding the defense, or are you just that slow? They put Petey in there, and the guy's in there swatting the ball away every other play.
Well, that's what Donald Faison replaces him. Dr. Turk.
Petey.
No, he's going to become a doctor and be on Scrubs, so it's going to be great. But he's probably that's the thing. Petey's got a higher football IQ, and he's more athletic. So sorry, I mean I realize you're going to be showing off your abs to Emma Stone later in life, but you're not equipped to cover receivers in Virginia high school football.
You need to go watch Place Beyond the Pines. Will you watch that for me?
I will. When you mentioned that to me, I looked it up because I was trying to remember. There was a big stretch of years where my kids were little, where we just didn't see a lot of movies. And you'll be in this stretch now. Your daughter's pretty young, so you can still watch whatever you want on TV, but she's going to get old enough to where she understands what's on TV, and you'll have to be a little more careful about what you watch. So it will limit the amount of movies you can watch. So this one came out in 2013. So that's when my son was 4, my daughter was 2. So that's not a movie we would have put on the TV. And by the time you go to bed, you're so exhausted you can barely watch anything. So we need to catch up on a lot of those movies. Like it's so funny. The Hangover was the last movie my wife and I saw in the theater before our first child was born. And I don't think I went into a movie theater again for like 6 years.
Well, the good news for you is that they don't make good movies anymore, so you can go back and watch all the good ones that you missed.
Yes.
The thing I want to ask you, parent to parent question that has nothing to do with
is it about cheese
football.
or peanut butter?
No.
Okay.
What is your take on curse words around the kids?
So I'm finding myself changing it as they get older. I did not cuss around them at all for most of the early parts of their lives, like up until they were probably, my daughter was 10. Now she's 11 now. And every once in a while, I'll let one slip now. Or every once in a while, we'll let them see a movie where there's quite a bit of cursing or some violence or something. And I don't want them to be the sheltered kids who've never heard any of these things, never seen any of these things. Like my wife tells this story about her siblings. She was one of 5 kids. So naturally, the older ones were always doing things to torture the younger ones. Well, they got her to say the C word. And she had no idea what it meant, because she'd never been exposed to any of that stuff. I don't remember where it was that they got her to say it, but it was somewhere embarrassing. And so she had no clue what she was saying. I don't want my kids to be those kids.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm a bad parent when it comes to this, but let me just tell you this. I don't give a shit about curse words. And I mean it that way because it's just like everybody says them in all walks of life all the time. And I get that you don't want them to say it in class, but like, I'm not one of these parents that's going to go every time anybody like says something like that's inappropriate.
And that's the thing that we have talked about here over the last year or two is just because you hear them doesn't mean you say them in class. Doesn't just understand there's a time and a place for everything, because
yes.
I want you to grow up to be a functional adult. I don't want you to grow up to be I know you're not going to be perfect.
I feel like glorifying though makes it more tempting to say.
Oh, I agree. Like it's one of the things I if you make something a thing, it'll be a thing. And that's what I worry about a lot. And it's weird because you'll see the spectrum of it. Like when your kid goes to school, there are parents who they'll show them R-rated movies when they're in elementary school. They don't care. The parents cuss like sailors around the kids. And then there are parents who like in middle school still don't let their kids say but. Like it is wild how far it stretches. And there's no like right. I don't think there's any right answer on what you're supposed to do or what you're supposed to say. I think trying to teach your kids how to understand social cues and understand, kind of read the room is a valuable skill. So that's what we're working on. And like with the music stuff, because there are a lot of songs, obviously I listen to a lot of hip hop and especially when I'm working out, and I didn't play those around the kids for the longest time. Well, I've started taking them to workouts at this gym where they just play them. And so my thing is, I'm not keeping you from them anymore. There are these words in these songs. You are going to hear them.
I was listening to hardcore rap music on the way to dropping off my 8-month-old daughter to the daycare.
Well, I did that too when my kids were that young. But
yeah, I guess it'll be interesting when she's 4, what it'll be like.
When they start talking and they can repeat everything, you don't want to be playing those songs around them because they will say that stuff at the grocery store.
But if they're listening to a 3-minute song. How do they know what word to pick?
They'll pick the one that gets repeated a lot, which
Yeah,
if
I
it's
guess,
the rap songs that we're talking about, you know which word it's going to be, and you know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So,
but I'm going to try to like lighten up on it a little bit, but it
yeah,
seems
you're
like
going to have to
pointless.
listen to that on your own for a while. But then again, they get older. Like my son's in middle school now, and he hears that stuff all the time.
I was listening to Jackie Martling stand-up comedy, the Howard
good
Stern,
Lord,
when I was like 11 years old in the car with my dad. Like some of my first memories of being a passenger in his car are listening to like Howard Stern and stuff.
Right. And so I'm finding myself, especially because my son is now, he's almost 13. Like I've really loosened up with that. And then my daughter is 11 and I've loosened up, but not as much because she's still a little bit younger. But by the time she's at 13, I'll have loosened up a lot with her too.
You know, back in the day, and I don't even know if my father knew what he was buying, but he bought me, like when I was in 3rd and 2nd grade, CD, like All Eyes on Me. He bought that for me. And I was like, I was listening to that. You know those headphones back in the day that used to go behind your ear?
Oh yeah.
Like they go behind your neck.
Oh
I'd be
yeah.
sitting in the back seat and I'd just be listening to Tupac when I was honestly like 9 years old. I think they had any idea what I was listening to. I was like, I want that CD, and they got it for me. I guess parental advisory didn't really work on
my parents were both high school teachers, so they knew what was popular. And so like it wasn't like I could go buy The Chronic. They were never going to let me do that. The Chronic came out,
if you told my mom The Chronic in 2000, what year was that? Like when it was
1992.
Like, if you told my mom The Chronic in 1995 when I was 8 or 9 years old when that stuff came out, like she wouldn't even know what that word means.
Yeah, so my dad, who's a high school assistant principal, knew exactly what it meant. So I couldn't, but my friends had it. So if I wanted to listen, so The Chronic came out, I believe I was in 8th grade. Doggy Style came out when I was in 9th grade. So all the death row stuff, and Tupac starts getting popular. I had to go to my friend's house to listen to that, or it was like smuggled in during a sleepover in my house, and we'd play it after my parents went to bed. But yeah, but by the time I had my own car, I had copies of all that stuff.
That's so funny. Like what we smuggled in. And it's the scariest thing too, is like thinking about like how easily accessible like terrible things are. Like if you think about listening to Tupac as some scandalous activity when you're 10 years old, like what a 10-year-old can do now.
The things that a person can access on the internet, which I didn't even know the internet was just something that astronauts used when I was in elementary, middle school. Like I didn't even get exposed to it to my senior year of high school. So the stuff that they can just access accidentally, randomly, or on purpose is insane.
Do your kids have iPads?
Yes.
Because everybody has an iPad now, right? Like that's like the thing. Like you can't make it through.
I have an app on there that blocks a lot of certain websites and then tells me if there's something weird or something questionable going on.
And it'll like alert your phone?
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. Because like I saw some 2020 special about how there was some weird person like installing software onto iPads with children's software on it, and like was like looking at kids through the
oh
camera.
Yeah, there's some sick people out there. No.
Yeah.
So I'm the one who puts the spyware on because I need to see what they're doing. And you know, as they get older and I can, if they earn the trust, then that stuff falls away.
Right.
But I need to see what's going on. I need to see, you know, if their friends are talking about something really bad or pointing them in a bad direction. I need to know that. And so far, so good. So we'll see. But it is scary to think. And that's why I've not, for the most part, I've resisted letting them get on social media. We had them on the one episode of the podcast, but for the most part, you don't see pictures of them on my Instagram. You don't see pictures of them on my Twitter. Like I'd like them to be kids for as long as humanly possible.
Well, thanks for taking me on the 5-minute parenting detour.
Yeah,
I figured I think
there's a lot of listeners out there who are there's a lot of listeners out there who are going through this too. Like who you know, and there isn't a manual for it. So we're all learning as we go. But it is crazy to think how different their childhoods are versus what we had. Like,
yeah.
I mean, I just think what if one of them I always worried about this. Like what if I had my phone open to Twitter when they were really little and one of them grabbed it and just typed in something horrible and hit send? Like,
Yeah.
what am I supposed to say to that?
Yeah, when I was in my 20s, I used to delete the Twitter app off my phone when I was drinking.
That's a good idea. That's good advice now. So
yeah, because like I'm a bigger problem than my kid right now. So
so when you're having those blimes, just delete the Twitter app. That's
right.
That's the way to do it. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been an absolute pleasure. Keep the 5-star reviews with the 5-star questions coming because you guys absolutely are 5-star listeners. We love you, and you're the best part about this show. As you can see, your questions are amazing. You think about this stuff and love this stuff as much as we do. So thank you for that. Got a big week coming next week. You're going to have new faces and new places with the Portal Authority, Max Olson, on Monday. And then a special treat the rest of the week. Now, you'll have your usual Stars Matter from Ari, but I am going to be on vacation, but that doesn't mean there won't be shows. We are going to have a lot of fun going through some of the classic games in recent college football history. You've heard the rewatchables on the Ringer where they'll do Karate Kid or the Goonies or a movie like that we loved as kids and watch it again and go through it. Well, we're doing that with college football games that we love. So these are the 3 games. We haven't actually decided on the order that they're going to be published in yet, but the 3 games we're doing are 2nd and 26 Alabama Georgia National Championship game, the Texas USC Rose Bowl with Vince Young, Reggie Bush, Matt Leinart, all those people. And then one that Ari is on, the one I consider the most shocking result of the past decade, the 2015 Michigan State, Ohio State game from the Horseshoe. And we recorded that the other day. It is awesome.
Yeah, no, it was fun to relive it, having been there in person. Very excited to have you guys here.
Yeah, so Ari and Bill Landis joined me for that one. It was awesome. So please enjoy those next week. Have fun. Be safe. Don't do anything I wouldn't. And we'll talk to you later.